there's a thin blue line between justice and corruption. But what happens when one of the men sworn to protect that line becomes the one to destroy it? In the heart of Los Angeles County, inside a jail meant to hold society's most dangerous, a secret brotherhood was forming, not among inmates, but among the very officers guarding them. And at the center of it all, one cop who didn't just look the other way. He joined the gang. This is the shocking true story of Deputy Miguel Vega, the lawman who became an outlaw, and how his rise inside one of America's largest jails exposed a dark truth about corruption. Behind bars. Los Angeles County Jail isn't just a detention center, it's a world of its own. Over 17,000 inmates, multiple factions, and enough violence to rival the streets outside. But what few knew, even within the department, was that gangs weren't just among inmates anymore. They were among the deputies. They called themselves names like the Executioners, the Jump-Out Boys, and the Banditos. They used police radios to coordinate hits, celebrated shootings with tattoos, and controlled entire units like organized crime families. And this is where Deputy Miguel Vega came in. Young, ambitious, eager to prove himself. But soon, he'd prove something far darker. Miguel Vega joined the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department with pride. He believed he was becoming part of something bigger, a system that would bring order to chaos. But from his very first shift inside the Compton patrol unit, the whispers began. The Banditos. That was the name they called themselves, a tight-knit group of deputies who ruled the station like their own gang. They chose who got backup, who got promotions, and who got punished. If you wanted to survive, you had to play along. And Vega. He didn't just play along. He joined the game. In any gang, even one wearing badges, there's an initiation. For the Banditos, that meant loyalty and proof. They called it earning your ink. You had to show you were down for the crew, even if it meant crossing the line. Sometimes, that meant using force. Sometimes, it meant silence. When Miguel Vega joined a traffic stop that turned violent, reports say he didn't just stand by. He participated, and later laughed about it with the others. That night he was offered a shot and a promise, and a few weeks later, he got his tattoo. Miguel Vega wasn't just a deputy anymore. He was a bandito. By 2018, the Sheriff's Department was under scrutiny. Whispers of deputy gangs had surfaced before, but nothing ever stuck. Until the violence began spilling into the open. Inside the jail, control wasn't always held by the wardens or sergeants. It was the cliques, small deputy gangs, who ran the show. They decided who got transferred, who got punished, and who got handled. Miguel Vega had found his family among them. He was now one of the Banditos, and the deeper he went, the more he realized the badge wasn't about justice. It was about power. Rumors spread that certain deputies were keeping order in their own way, beatings that never made it into reports, retaliation disguised as inmate discipline, and every time blood was spilled, the crew celebrated, just like any street gang would. Like any gang, the Banditos had rules. Rules that no academy manual would ever teach you. Rule number 1, never write up another deputy. Rule number 2, loyalty above law. And rule number 3, you don't get the ink until you've proven you'll bleed. To outsiders, it looked like brotherhood. To insiders, it was control. If you questioned the crew, you lost backup on the streets. Calls for help went unanswered. And inside those jail walls, that could mean your life. Vega learned fast. He stayed loyal, did his part, and kept quiet. But loyalty has a cost. And soon, that cost would come due. July 2020. It was supposed to be a routine patrol night in Compton. Deputy Vega and his partner, Chris Hernandez, were driving near an empty parking lot when they saw two young men standing by a car. Nothing unusual until one of them ran. According to the official report, Vega and Hernandez chased the suspects, claiming one reached for a weapon, but witnesses tell a different story. Moments later, gunfire. One young man fell. His name was Andres Guardado. An 18-year-old security guard with no criminal record, shot 5 times in the back. The killing sent shockwaves across Los Angeles. Vega claimed it was self-defense, but rumors quickly spread that it was more than that. That Vega had been pressured to prove himself again. That this was no mistake, but an initiation. That night didn't just end a young man's life. It shattered the illusion that these gangs were just rumors. Because the truth was now bleeding out in the open. When the shooting hit the news, the department moved fast. Too fast. Witnesses said deputies swarmed the scene, not to investigate but to control it. Security cameras malfunctioned. Phones were confiscated. And within hours, Vega's report was filed and sealed. But in the age of social media, the truth spreads faster than cover-ups. Protests erupted. Families demanded answers, and journalists began digging into Vega's history, uncovering something darker. He wasn't the only one with that same skull tattoo. The Banditos weren't a rumor anymore. They were real. And now, they had a body count. Every empire built on lies eventually meets someone who refuses to stay silent. For the sheriff's department, that person was Deputy Art Gonzalez. Gonzalez wasn't an outsider. He'd worn the same badge, but what he saw, the hazing, the assaults, the bandito tattoos, made him sick. He called it what it really was, a criminal organization within the department. When Gonzalez filed his complaint, it was like setting off a grenade in the middle of the station. He accused top-ranking deputies of covering up assaults, punishing anyone who didn't fall in line, and promoting members of the gang. The system didn't take it well. Gonzalez was transferred, threatened, isolated, but his story wasn't easy to silence anymore. Because the truth had started leaking to journalists, to lawyers, and to the public. In downtown Los Angeles, journalist Cerise Castle began piecing the puzzle together. She'd heard whispers of deputy gangs for years, but what she found went beyond rumor. Through leaked photos, court filings, and interviews, she identified at least 18 deputy gangs inside the department, each with its own tattoo, each with its own initiation, and each protected by a code of silence. It was a revelation and a scandal that shook the department to its core. Castle's investigation exposed a culture of violence, secrecy, and impunity that had existed for decades. And suddenly, Miguel Vega's name wasn't just part of a headline. It was part of a pattern. The story was everywhere. But inside the department, the silence grew louder. When power is threatened, loyalty dies first. After the Andres Guardado shooting, some deputies began to question everything. Rumors spread that Vega and others were being sacrificed to protect higher-ups in the Banditos chain. He'd done everything they asked. He'd earned his ink. But when investigators came calling, the same brothers who once backed him now claimed they'd barely known him. They distanced themselves, scrubbed records, deleted texts. And once again, the system began to bury its own sins. Inside the department, fear ruled. No one spoke. but outside. The streets were demanding justice. Protests filled downtown LA. Chants echoed through the night. No justice, no peace. End police gangs. What began as a single shooting had exploded into a full-scale movement against corruption inside the sheriff's department. Families of victims came forward, each story painting the same haunting picture, a badge used not for justice, but for domination. And in that chaos, Deputy Miguel Vega disappeared from public view. No more patrols, no more statements, just silence. But the question still lingered. Was Vega the villain, or just another soldier in a war that had been fought behind closed doors for decades? By late 2021, the truth could no longer hide behind sealed reports. The Inspector General opened an investigation into the Banditos, the executioners, and other deputy gangs. Whistleblowers described hazing rituals, beatings, even extortion. One deputy testified that new recruits were forced to buy beer, perform missions, and sometimes even take part in unjustified beatings to earn their tattoo. It sounded unbelievable, but the evidence was undeniable. Photos, chats, internal memos marked, "Do not distribute." And when investigators traced the timeline back to the killing of Andres Guardado, one name appeared again and again: Miguel Vega. When the hammer finally came down, it didn't strike all at once. It came slowly, case by case, like a crumbling wall. Civil rights lawsuits piled up. Families demanded answers. The department was dragged into hearings, forced to reveal decades of internal records. And in one of those hearings, it became clear that the so-called brotherhood had turned on itself. Vega's former partners began cutting deals, admitting to hidden cliques and secret rituals. Each confession added another crack to the foundation. And for Miguel Vega, there was nowhere left to hide. The badge he once polished with pride had become a symbol of betrayal. Vega's life after the shooting was quiet. No more patrols, no more brotherhood, just silence and regret. But inside the Los Angeles County Jail, the system he helped feed still thrived. The gangs hadn't vanished. They'd adapted. New names, new tattoos, new soldiers wearing old uniforms. And even now, many who once wore the mark of the Banditos still patrol the streets, their ink hidden, their loyalty buried beneath the surface. Because when corruption becomes tradition, it doesn't die easily. It hides behind the badge. In the end, there were no parades, no dramatic arrests, just headlines and silence. Miguel Vega faded into the background, his name buried beneath lawsuits and controversy. But for the families of those who lost their lives, the wounds never healed. They say every badge tells a story. Some are stories of honor, others of horror. And the story of the cop who joined a gang isn't just about one man. It's about a system that forgot what justice meant. Because when the line between justice and corruption fades, who's left to protect the innocent? If you believe stories like this deserve to be heard, subscribe, share, and let the world know. Justice isn't just about punishment, it's about truth.